600 hours, contested waters, South China Sea. A thick, suffocating gray mist hangs over the ocean surface, reducing visibility to near zero. The Coast Guard cutter slices through the swells with a steady mechanical rhythm that vibrates through the steel deck plates. On the bridge, crew members stand at their stations, their faces illuminated by the soft green glow of instrument panels. The smell of hot coffee mixes with the damp, salty air blowing in through the cracked weather door. It feels like a ghost ship moving through a void, the world outside the glass reduced to a swirling wall of white vapor. The silence is heavy, broken only by the low hum of the diesel engines and the rhythmic splash of water against the hull. The monotony breaks instantly when the radar screen pulses. A solid amber blip appears at the very edge of the sweep range, appearing and disappearing with the rotation of the scanner. It is not a fishing boat. The return signature indicates something massive, metallic, and heavy. The radar operator leans in, eyes narrowing as the blip solidifies. The object accelerates, closing the distance with aggressive speed. The calm atmosphere on the bridge shatters. The radar operator calls out the bearing with a sharp, clipped voice. The blip moves faster than a commercial vessel. The captain grabs his binoculars and stares into the impenetrable wall of white fog. Nothing is visible yet, but the presence of the intruder is felt in the vibration of the deck. The engines of the cutter ramp up, the low hum turning into a guttural roar as the vessel prepares for maneuvering. The proximity alarm begins to chirp, a sharp, rhythmic warning that cuts through the quiet bridge like a knife. The crew moves with practiced urgency. Hands grip railings, eyes scan the gray horizon. The mist swirls violently ahead, disturbed by a massive displacement of air and water. A dark, jagged shape materializes from the gloom. It pushes a massive bow wave that rolls forward and smashes against the cutter's hull. The steel Leviathan towers over the smaller patrol ship. It is a foreign frigate, gray and menacing, emerging from the fog like a predator. The sheer scale of the vessel blocks out the morning light. The cutter's hull shudders violently as it hits the wake of the larger ship. Books slide off navigation tables. Coffee mugs crash to the floor, spilling hot liquid across the non-slip decking. The officer of the deck shouts orders to the helm to bring the ship about. The frigate does not alter course. It plows forward, forcing the cutter to yield or be crushed. The distance shrinks rapidly. 2,000 yards, 1,500 yards. The captain snatches the radio handset. He barks a warning on the international emergency frequency, demanding identification and immediate course correction. Static hisses back, the radio remains silent. The frigate looms closer, its sharp bow cutting the water. The cutter's helmsman spins the wheel hard over. The ship lists heavily to starboard, straining against the ocean as the propellers bite into the water. The gray hull of the frigate fills the viewports, a wall of steel bearing down on them. Sailors on the deck of the cutter grab lifelines as the ship pitches wildly in the turbulent water churned up by the approaching warship. The shadow of the frigate passes over them, cold and imposing. 6:15 hours, bridge of the Coast Guard cutter. The vessel rights itself with a groan of stressed metal. The heavy roll subsides into a violent chop. The gray hull of the frigate runs parallel to the cutter, less than 300 yards away. The sheer mass of the foreign warship blocks the rising sun, casting a long, cold shadow over the smaller patrol boat. On the bridge wing, the lookout grips the railing, his knuckles white. The air creates a vacuum between the two ships, a tunnel of wind and spray. The red flag on the frigate's mast snaps violently in the wind. The radio crackles with static. The communications officer repeats the hail. He demands the frigate acknowledge their presence and maintain a safe distance. The speaker remains dead, no response. The frigate's bridge windows are dark, reflecting the gray sky, revealing nothing of the crew inside. Suddenly, the frigate's exhaust funnels belch a thick column of black diesel smoke. The dark cloud chokes the air, drifting rapidly toward the cutter. The deep thrum of the frigate's turbines rises in pitch. It accelerates. The water at its stern churns into a white frenzy. The massive ship does not pull away. It turns hard to port. The sharp steel bow swings directly across the cutter's path. The collision alarm screams. The sound pierces the bridge, a high-pitched electronic shriek that drowns out the roar of the ocean. "Hard to starboard, all back full," the captain bellows. The helmsman spins the wheel until it locks. He jams the throttles into reverse. The cutter shudders violently as the propellers fight against the forward momentum. The engine room alarms trigger as the drive shaft strains under the sudden torque. The hull vibrates so intensely that rivets rattle in their casings. The frigate cuts across the bow with terrifying speed. Its steel hull fills the entire forward view. The distance closes to 50 yards, 40, 30. The massive wake from the frigate hits the cutter broadside. The impact feels like a physical blow from a giant hammer. The cutter pitches wildly, rolling nearly 30 degrees. Inside the mess deck, unsecured chairs slide across the linoleum and crash into the bulkheads. Plates shatter. A sailor is thrown from his feet, slamming his shoulder hard against a metal locker. He grunts in pain and scrambles for a handhold. On the bridge, charts and pens fly off the navigation table. The executive officer braces himself against the radar console to stay upright. The frigate's stern misses the cutter's bow by mere feet. The wash from its propellers sprays the cutter's deck with heavy salt water. The foreign ship completes its aggressive maneuver, now sitting directly in front of the patrol boat, blocking its path completely. The cutter wallows in the turbulent water, engines idling, the crew breathless. 6:25 hours, forward deck of the Coast Guard cutter. The vessel rocks heavily in the turbulent wash. Foam and debris drift between the two hulls. The frigate maintains its position, looming like a cliff face of gray steel less than 100 yards off the starboard beam. Sailors on the cutter's deck pull themselves up from the wet grating, checking for injuries. The air is thick with diesel fumes and the spray of the ocean. The silence is short-lived. A sharp mechanical hiss erupts from the superstructure of the frigate. A high-pressure nozzle on the upper deck swivels. A massive jet of seawater blasts across the gap. It hits the cutter with the force of a solid object. The stream slams into the bridge windows, blurring the world outside into a chaotic wash of white foam. The glass shudders under the impact. The water jet sweeps along the starboard railing. It catches a lookout standing near the bridge wing. The force lifts him off his feet. He flies backward, crashing hard into the steel bulkhead. His radio skitters across the deck. The stream tears loose equipment from its mountings. A canvas cover rips away, tumbling into the sea. An exterior floodlight shatters, sparking briefly before the water drowns the electrical connection. "General quarters! General quarters!" the captain yells into the ship-wide intercom. The alarm klaxon sounds again, a pulsing, urgent tone. Crew members sprint through the narrow corridors. They dog down watertight hatches, spinning the heavy steel wheels until they lock. In the armory, the gunner's mate unlocks the weapons locker. He grabs ammunition cans. The heavy metallic clank of steel on steel echoes off the walls. On the bridge, the water cannon ceases its assault. The spray subsides. Water pours off the scuppers, draining back into the ocean. The frigate is not done. A low, mechanical whine grinds through the air. On the frigate's foredeck, the canvas cover over the main gun draws back. The turret jerks. The long barrel of the deck gun rotates. It swings smoothly, locking its aim directly on the cutter's bridge. The black hole of the muzzle stares them down. The cutter's captain grabs the tactical mic. He orders the 50 caliber machine gun crews to their stations. The tactic changes from avoidance to defense. Two sailors rush to the starboard gun mount. They rip the tarp off the heavy machine gun. The gunner racks the charging handle. The metallic clack-clack creates a sharp, lethal sound in the humid air. He grips the butterfly trigger, pressing his shoulder into the stock. He aims the barrel at the frigate's waterline. The two ships drift together, locked in a standoff. The only sound is the idling engines and the wind whistling through the rigging. The threat is no longer a collision, it is a firefight. 6:32 hours, bridge of the Coast Guard cutter. The standoff breaks with a sudden guttural roar. The frigate's engines cycle from idle to maximum power in seconds. Thick, black smoke pours from the stacks, darkening the sky above the two vessels. The water at the frigate's stern boils into a violent white froth. The massive warship lunges forward, it does not turn away. It aims its reinforced steel bow directly at the cutter's stern. "They are accelerating! Closing speed, 20 knots!" the radar operator yells. The deck plates vibrate beneath the captain's boots. He watches the gray mountain of steel gather momentum. The frigate is no longer posturing. It is attempting a kinetic strike. A collision at this speed will shear the back of the cutter off, sending the rudder and propellers into the depths. "All ahead flank, hard left rudder," the captain commands. The helmsman slams the throttles to the stops. The cutter's diesel engines scream in protest. The propellers bite into the water, fighting to drag the heavy patrol boat out of the kill zone. The ship leans precariously to the left, the deck tilting sharply. Unsecured tools in the bridge slide and hit the bulkhead with a metallic crash. The frigate closes the gap. 50 yards, 40 yards. The sound of the rushing water between the hulls is deafening. The bow of the warship looms over the cutter's fantail, blocking out the horizon. The wake from the frigate lifts the cutter's stern, tossing the smaller vessel like a toy. Sailors on the aft deck scramble up the tilted surface, grabbing cleats and railings to avoid sliding into the churning water below. The frigate refuses to yield. It pushes closer, crowding the cutter, forcing it toward the shallow reefs. The metal hull of the enemy ship fills the entire rear view. It is dangerously close, too close. The wind from the frigate's passage whips the American flag on the cutter's mast. The captain grabs the handset for the external loudspeaker system. His voice booms over the water, distorted by the wind but unmistakably clear. He orders the vessel to back off immediately. The frigate ignores the command. It inches closer. The bow is now less than 20 yards from the cutter's propellers. "We are in extremis!" the executive officer shouts over the noise of the engines. The captain drops the handset. He looks at the gunner on the starboard wing. The sailor is strapped into the harness of the heavy machine gun, his body vibrating with the motion of the ship. He looks back at the captain, waiting. The captain nods once. He points a finger sharply toward the open water in front of the frigate's bow. "Battery release! Fire warning shots! Fire! Fire! Fire!" 0636 hours. Starboard gun mount, Coast Guard cutter. The gunner leans his weight into the steel stock of the 50 caliber machine gun. He exhales sharply and depresses the butterfly triggers. The weapon erupts. It bucks violently against the mount, sending tremors through the deck grating. A heavy, rhythmic hammering shatters the air, drowning out the roar of the engines and the crash of the waves. Muzzle flashes pulse rapidly, bright orange bursts cutting through the gray mist. Hot brass shell casings eject from the side of the receiver. They spin through the air, clattering loudly against the steel deck plates, rolling into the scuppers. A distinctive smell of burnt gunpowder and cordite instantly floods the bridge wing, mixing with the salt spray. The ammo belt feeds rapidly into the weapon, the metal links disintegrating as the rounds are stripped and fired. Red tracer rounds streak out from the barrel. They look like laser beams slashing across the narrow gap between the two vessels. The bullets strike the ocean surface just 15 yards ahead of the frigate's rushing bow. They impact the water with violent force, kicking up a straight line of white geysers. The rounds skip and ricochet off the surface, hissing as they fly past the massive steel hull of the Chinese warship. The gunner traverses the barrel slightly. He walks the fire from left to right, creating a visible wall of splashing lead directly in the frigate's path. The tracers burn bright even in the morning light, an unmistakable signal of lethal intent. The frigate plows through the disturbed water where the bullets hit, its bow wave crushing the foam. Check fire, the captain barks. The gunner releases the triggers. The heavy thumping stops instantly. The silence that follows is sudden and ringing. Smoke drifts lazily from the perforated heat shield of the barrel. The gunner keeps the weapon trained on the target, his chest heaving. On the deck, the pile of hot brass casings steams in the damp air. The frigate is now dangerously close. The warning shots have been fired. The splashes have faded. The massive gray bow continues to rise and fall with the swell. It does not slow down. It does not turn. The steel wall pushes forward, consuming the empty space that remains. 6:37 hours, the gap between vessels. The sound of the machine gun fades, replaced by the crushing roar of water. The frigate's bow slices through the lingering white foam where the warning shots splashed. It is now inside the safety perimeter. The steel Leviathan occupies the entire field of vision for the crew on the cutter's aft deck. There is no room left to maneuver. The cutter is trapped against the invisible wall of the oncoming displacement wave. The collision is seconds away. Suddenly, the pitch of the frigate's engines changes. It shifts from a deep thrum to a high-pitched mechanical scream. The exhaust stacks vomit a dense cloud of black soot that instantly engulfs the rear of the ship. The water at the frigate's stern stops flowing backward and explodes outward. The frigate executes a crashback. The massive bronze propellers beneath the surface stop spinning and violently reverse direction. They bite into the ocean with maximum torque, fighting the ship's forward momentum. The vibration is so intense that the frigate's radar mast shakes visibly against the sky. The ocean around the stern turns into a boiling cauldron of white water and foam. The frigate's bow dips sharply as the braking force takes hold. The forward motion slows, but the inertia carries the thousands of tons of steel forward. It slides closer to the cutter. 50 feet, 40 feet. The wave generated by the sudden reversal hits the cutter's hull. The smaller ship is thrown sideways. It lists 40 degrees to port, the deck railing dipping precariously close to the waterline. On the bridge of the cutter, the quartermaster loses his footing and slides across the polished floor, slamming into the chart table. The captain grabs the overhead handle with both hands, his boots scrambling for traction on the tilted deck. Loose gear, binoculars, clipboards, coffee mugs, cascades off the consoles and crashes against the bulkhead. The hull groans under the stress, a loud metallic moaning that echoes through the ship. The frigate finally halts. Its sharp gray bow comes to rest less than 30 feet from the cutter's fantail. The momentum bleeds off completely. The two ships drift in the churning, aerated water, locked in a tight, suffocating embrace. The heat radiating from the frigate's engines washes over the cutter's deck. The smell of unburnt diesel fuel is overpowering. High above on the frigate's bridge wing, a door opens. A Chinese officer steps out. He raises a pair of binoculars and looks down at the cutter. He does not wave. He does not speak. He simply watches. 6:40 hours, the collision zone. The violent churning of the water begins to subside. The white foam between the two hulls dissolves slowly, fading into the deep gray of the ocean swells. The air remains heavy, thick with the blue haze of burnt gunpowder and the oily, choking stench of unburnt diesel fuel. The cutter rides the waves, its deck plates slick with saltwater spray. The massive steel wall of the frigate towers overhead, blocking out the eastern sky and casting a long, cold shadow over the American vessel. The only sounds are the deep, throaty idle of the massive main engines and the rhythmic slap of water against the metal skins of the ships. The distance between the vessels is measured in feet. Sailors on the cutter's aft deck can see the individual rivets on the frigate's hull. They can see the rust streaks running down the heavy anchor chain. On the starboard bridge wing, the gunner's mate does not relax. He keeps his cheek pressed firmly against the steel stock of the machine gun, his gloved finger resting lightly on the butterfly trigger. The barrel tracks the bridge of the foreign warship. The lens of the weapon sight is filled with gray steel. One wrong move, one accidental slip, and the standoff explodes. A loud mechanical clank echoes from the frigate. On the forward deck, the automated turret of the main deck gun jerks. It rotates away from the cutter, swinging smoothly until it locks back into its travel position facing the bow. The immediate threat of the cannon recedes. The tension on the cutter's bridge drops perceptibly. The water around the frigate's bow erupts again. The bow thrusters engage with a high-pitched, turbine-like whine. Jets of water push the massive ship's nose aggressively to starboard. The hull pivots slowly, grinding against the resistance of the ocean. The frigate turns its back on the cutter. The stern swings out. The gap between the vessels widens. 10 yards, 20 yards, sunlight hits the cutter's deck as the shadow retreats. Stand down from general quarters. Set condition 2. Damage control teams report to the bridge, the captain says. He steps out onto the bridge wing, gripping the wet railing. The frigate gathers speed. The black smoke from its stacks thins to a gray streamer. It does not acknowledge the warning shots. It does not signal. It simply resumes its patrol, cutting a new wake through the morning mist. The massive vessel shrinks into the distance, returning to the fog bank from which it emerged. The cutter is left bobbing in the turbulent wash, alone once more on the gray ocean.